Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you back to the Dynamic Decisions podcast, where we explore the strategies that drive successful decision making in the world of business. Why? Because the best decisions come from great conversations. I'm your host, Teasha Cable, CEO of C Model Data, and today's guest has lived in the operational trenches where most frameworks go to die. He's an industrial engineer, systems architect, and an AI practitioner who argues that organizations don't fail because they lack data. They fail because nobody designed them to make sense of it. He's the founder and CEO of Eminence Consulting and Prodigy IQ Technologies. His name is David. Welcome to the show, David. Thank you for being here. Would you please just tell the audience a little bit more about you and more about your business?
Well, hello, Teasha. A little bit about me. I spent over 15 years, close to 20 years in manufacturing, but 15 years working directly with a manufacturing company. And I spent the last 4 to 5 years consulting manufacturing companies. During that journey, I dibble and dabble in AI. I study AI. I've been studying this technology for the past 15 years. But a little bit about what I do in this consulting and business solutions. I also have a technology company called Prodigy IQ Technologies. And in Prodigy IQ Technologies, we have several different softwares that we created, from our operational intelligence platform for manufacturing companies to help them make decisions faster when they have operational challenges. But also, I came up with another system called WorkTelly, which create digital workforce, and also an intelligence platform that sits on top of the system that they already have.
Awesome. So here's my first question for you. Let's start with the thesis that anchors your work. So tier one suppliers are sitting on petabytes of telemetry, MES
Yes.
data, quality logs, warranty returns, and yet the BCG numbers still show roughly 70% of industrial AI pilots never really make it to production. What is the structural difference between a plant that collects data and a plant that actually understands itself?
A lot of plants don't lack tools. They lack understanding on how to use those tools, how to use that data. They're collecting the data, but they don't understand how to dissect it. They don't understand what this signal means, how to make a decision from this signal, how to analyze this decision, and how to implement this decision. And what I've seen in companies is they are more reactive when they get a signal than proactive when they receive it. Just think about when you running a production line and you collecting all of this data, you looking at your numbers and things like that. But if you're not properly analyzing those numbers, making decisions that drive those numbers and increasing your productivity, then you're just going to be lost. And a lot of organizations, especially manufacturing companies right now, they're lost because they send terabytes of data, but no way to interpret it.
So you've spent 5+ years really advising these tier one and tier two automotive suppliers, while the whole sector right now we know is rewiring itself for things like EVs.
Yes.
So when margins are compressed, these OEMs are really pushing costs down the chain, and then the quality really escapes. And
Yes.
they're more expensive than they've ever been. When you walk into the C-suite today, these companies that you work with, what's the blind spot that you almost always find in how they're thinking about warehouse automation and logistics?
Well, one of the things that I notice is they don't understand patterns. So they're looking at Pareto charts, they're looking at Ishikawa diagrams, but they're not analyzing the patterns. So if you don't have a tool that helps you analyze patterns and see those patterns and track those patterns and give you recommendations, then you're going to be lost. You're going to constantly be in a state of firefighting. You're going to be in a state of overproduction, producing waste, and things that I've seen in companies because they have all this data, they collecting the defects, but they don't understand how to properly root cause and triage these information that they have to make better decisions.
Yeah, static dashboards, for example, they're a comfort food of operations leadership, right?
Yeah.
But On a greenfield automation project, like how do you help a team tell the difference between a metric that's actually a leading indicator and one that might look impressive in a Monday review?
Mainly what I tell them is keep it simple. I'm always looking at, okay, what is our objective? What are we pushing towards? Like most people want to automate but don't know what to automate. So they automate everything and solve nothing. I look at redundancy. What is redundant? What manufacturing company do? They run a lot of reports. Okay, that's something that you need to automate. And once you automate those reports, now you set a system up that takes those reports. Once they get automated, they analyze, interpret, and give you predictions, give you recommendations, and give you action items to what you need to do next based on that information, based on the objective and direction of the organization. And that's something that a lot of manufacturing companies are lacking right now.
What would be one example of where you've seen this point of failure?
I worked with a company, was launching a project, and this was a new project, new team, new company. They had been doing some work like that elsewhere, but then they came into a company. They got awarded a contract that has more complexity than who they used to working with, because they have, just think about 50 different variants, or they may have 700 different variants. So that's a lot of complexity when you're working with an OEM manufacturer that gives their consumers options. So
Mhm.
knowing that, you bring in a team, you got your team set up, and now you running your production line, and now you producing defects. I've seen a company burn through $250,000 a day just in
Mm.
material, not counting labor, not counting rework, not counting time, all of the investigation, not counting that. And when I seen that, that what really sparked my attention. Like, hey, it's something that has to be done, because they was playing whack-a-mole trying to fix something that was simple, because they wasn't seeing the patterns. They was making it more about equipment when it was people. They'll look at the people when it was equipment. So they really didn't have the basis of understanding of what was going on. And then we'll have these meetings every day, and I was working alongside another consulting company that they'll come in and create these extravagant charts and diagrams, but they didn't fix the problem. You know,
Right.
you make it look pretty on paper, but it's still ugly on the floor. So I
Mm.
was, okay, you want to make it look pretty. I'm gonna expose the ugly. The way I think in patterns. I think root cause analysis. I don't treat symptoms, I treat problems. Because you treat the problem, you solve the symptoms. And
Mhm.
looking at that, I said, I'm going to walk it back. So what I did was I put quality gates in every area that had a manufacturing process that were in-house. I put a
Mhm.
quality gate there, and I started taking that information and I started looking at it, tracing it back to the documentation.
Mhm.
That process is tedious. So knowing that that process is tedious, I said, I got to create something that streamlines this, where instead of me tracing it back to the documentation, it goes back to the documentation once it's reported. And once it's reported, it automatically looks at the documentation based on the context of the defect, and it immediately tell me what the problem is. And we solve it, and we go back and verify it. And once we verify it, we document our lesson learned. Now we have a running repository of what the defect was. So if we have it again, we can go into the system and look at similar problems. Therefore, we cut time on investigation, because in manufacturing, it takes about 30 to 40 days to investigate one defect.
Let's talk a little bit about Prodigy IQ. So you launched this AI native quality platform in April of 24. And just right as the industry was really waking up to what AI can do versus AI native anyway versus AI bolted onto the legacy stack. So why was that the specific moment, and what decision gap inside a plant were you really building towards?
I was building towards small to medium manufacturing companies, because those are the manufacturing companies that really get bit the most when it comes to defects. Say, for instance, if you're a tier one supplier to a company like Mercedes, one defect, if it shuts a line down, it could cost you $12,000 a minute. So if you got a defect that shut the plant down for a whole day, a whole shift, that's $8.5 million that you're going to get charged back. So I was looking at those different pain points, but not only I was looking at the pain points of the defect, I was looking at the pain points of the people, because manufacturing is very harsh on families, because once you have a defect, that defect just don't affect that plant, it affect that family. Whether you're a quality engineer, plant manager, quality director, you taking that defect home with you. So I'm thinking about all of the tangible and intangible things when I was creating this software, because I seen a lot of people do it wrong, but I also seen a lot of families get broken because of the stress of manufacturing, the causes of defects, because he have to spend more time at work than he spend at home. And even when he's at home, he's not at home because that defect is at home with him, which takes him away from his family.
This is such an interesting area because I really dig into the human impact of our decisions and the things that we're doing. So I have this trust question. So you have a line supervisor with 22 years on the floor, and your model is telling her that a pattern is forming on line 3 that her gut doesn't quite see yet. Can you walk us through a moment when you've had to navigate that tension between veteran instinct and algorithmic prediction? Who wins? And then how do you build a system where both sides get smart?
Well, when you building these systems, I always put a layer of self-reflection where the system that I built, it gets smarter. It gets smarter and smarter, because once they put their lesson learns into that system saved that lesson as a reflection. It saves that verification as a reflection. And when that pattern happens again, it always goes back to that reflection before it makes a decision. It thinks, it decide, it act, it analyze, it do all of those things before it even give you anything. So it's thinking for you, but you feeding the context. So if you feed it the wrong data, then you're gonna mess up the algorithm. But it also has a place where it auto corrects, because it's not pulling information out of thin air. It uses solely their information, their documentation. So if the data is right going in, then there's no way that the algorithm could be wrong. Total resistance that I've had working with veteran people, they rely more on what they think versus what they know. They're very focused on what they think. So you have to continue to train your mind to think outside of the box, because most veterans are stuck in the box. So you have to pull them out of the box. You have to empower them to trust. And the way you empower them to trust is to get them involved in the implementation so they can understand. And I believe most people resist systems like this because they're uneducated and they have fear of what the media says about AI. Is it going to take my job or things like that? No, this is to augmentate your job so you can do your job more efficiently. Your job roles change from being an operator to an analyst. The way these systems are built now is changing the way you operate. One thing that I've learned about AI is it exposes secrets that you have hidden.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it do. It exposes what you cover up with money, what you cover up with people. So now you have this tool that is streamlining everything, and it exposes that you didn't solve the problem. You just covered this problem with your money. Now it's showing you this is what you should have done in the first place. But without that system, you would have never noticed that.
Yeah, really good. I want to go into my favorite segment of every episode. So I'm going to read 4 statements. Each one of them represents a different decision-making persona. And after each one, you're going to tell me on a scale from 0 to 100% how much what I've said actually reflects how you make decisions. Now you got to keep track though, because you only get 100%. Okay. So there's 4, you only get 100% total across all 4, but you can scale any one of them 0 to 100. Got it?
Got it.
Okay, here's the first one. It's called The Feeler. It's a values driven leader. Automation is never just about throughput. Every line I help design affects real operators, real quality engineers, real communities that depend on that plant staying open. When I'm choosing between 2 solutions and one extracts value while the other builds capability in the people on the floor, that's not a close call for me. If the technology doesn't give the human on the line more clarity and more agency, I won't ship it, even if it's a faster path to revenue. Okay, David, how much does that resonate with you?
It resonate a lot with me. And to think about that, I believe in structure bringing clarity. So I give it probably like 85.
85. Oh, okay. So if that's 85%, that doesn't leave you much left for the next three.
Hold on. Let's walk this back.
Okay. So pipe that down. What do you want to go with?
Let me go with, I'll say 30%.
Okay. So you are now 30%. Go ahead. Tell me your why.
Because I'm really value driven. I believe in excellence, integrity, operational excellence, because I know that operational excellence brings value. I'm all about value. I believe in quality over quantity because you can build a whole lot of nothing and you can build a little of something. And that
Yeah.
little something could make you more money than that whole lot of nothing, which is costing you a lot of money. And I want to give you a horror story.
Yeah.
I work for this particular company. This is a multi-billion-dollar company. And me, I'm just a consultant. I'm inside of this company, just came off active duty for the military. I went into this company. They had another consulting company in there that was charging them $4 million a month just to create charts and graphs. Solve no problems. So I went in and they had an issue where they were building a part for a German OEM. And when they was building this part, they was having issues with throughput. They had 70 quality alerts for this one part, 70, which means that they can't get right. They was on escalation. Equipment was being ripped out because they couldn't get right. And I got there and I looked at, they were like, well, we just going to build a whole lot on them until we get it right. I said, no, we're not. What we're going to do is we're going to build one at a time. And as we build, we're going to make adjustments. And if the adjustment don't work, we're not going to run this machine until we produce one good part. We're not going to continue to build scrap and increase our costs. I got put out of that plant. And I didn't get put out of that plant because I didn't solve the problem. I got put out of that plant because I was taken away from the business model of the consulting company because they get paid off of hours. I want to get paid from value.
That totally makes sense. And
Yeah.
is much more admirable than anything other than that. So let's move to the next one, okay? So the next one is called the planner. It's a
Okay.
strategic visionary. So when I'm designing a greenfield implementation, I'm not solving for the next quarter's throughput. Boom, you just said that. I'm building for a plant that has to survive an EV transition, a reshoring wave, a workforce turnover cycle, and a technology stack that will be obsolete in 7 years. Every decision either creates future optionality or quietly locks the business into a corner. The more intelligence layer matters more than the equipment because the equipment will get replaced. The architecture is what compounds. So, David, how much of that sort of strategic, visionary thinking, planning mode would you say you have?
25. That's a mode I'm in right now.
Got it. Right. 25% planner. Let's keep going. The next one is called the counter. It's the challenger of assumptions. So everyone is chasing bigger data lakes. I think most of them are drowning. The industry accepted a decade ago that more data equals better decisions, and nobody stress tests that assumption anymore. So my unfair advantage is refusing to believe it. I'd rather have one clean signal that points to actual failure mode than a dashboard with 40 KPIs that tell me nothing. The contrarian move right now is subtraction, not accumulation. So, David, how much
That's
does
me
that?
out. That's 30 right there. I got to
That's
get that
30.
30.
Okay.
I got to get that 30 because I know KPIs mean a lot back in the day, but now trying to dissect all of that, not get a system that you define your goals and let that system take your goals and articulate what you need to do going forward based on the direction where you want to go.
For sure. All right. So that leaves you 15% for this last one. Are you ready?
Yes.
This one is called the data driver, an evidence-based operator. So the statement is, I'm a Lean Six Sigma practitioner before anything else. Show me the root cause. Show me the 8D. Show me the control chart. If the evidence says a machine learning model can predict a failure before a human can see it, I follow that signal every time. I don't need the model to be philosophically satisfying. I need it to be right more often than the alternative, and I need the audit trail to prove it. David, how much of that is you?
15. That was strategic.
15%. So you are 30% feeler, 25% planner, 30% counter, and 15% data driver. Thank you for participating in my fun little exercise. So you're really out here framing organizational self-awareness, and it really changes how I think about the gap between reporting and understanding. So I have one last question for you before we go. So for the leader who's listening right now, who's running into messy, complex operations and may be quietly postponing big decisions, what's the one decision that they should stop delaying?
Stop pulling things and start pushing.
Say more.
See, we have a tendency to have to ask. That's pulling versus pushing when it's sent to you, given to you. And that's one thing that I've learned with my company, because I built a system that every day it pushed a decision that I need to make based on the status of where I'm at. And it gives me recommendation. It predict what I'm going to do based on my behavior or what I haven't done. So it takes more time to pull than to get it pushed. And if you have the right framework when it's pushed to you, then you will always be in the right place, because pulling is reactive. Pushing is proactive. I'm not a firefighter. I may start one, but I ain't going to fight it.
Very nice. Well, David, listen, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. Where can our listeners find you and learn more about Eminence and Prodigy IQ?
You can find me on LinkedIn, David Craig, whole lot of initials at the end of my name. You can find my business page on LinkedIn on Prodigy IQ Technologies, as well as Eminence Consulting and Business Solutions. I don't have any other social media. I'm just LinkedIn only.
Well, thank you so much. David, thank you for being here. And for our audience, we want to thank you for tuning in. Remember, the best decisions come from great conversations. If you're ready to build a system that understands itself, we'd love for you to subscribe and join us next time. Keep questioning, keep growing, and keep leading with purpose.